Hey y'all. Hello and welcome back to Car Show and Tell. Once again, I am Tim the Tool Man, and I don't know what my dog is doing. I'm Tim the Tool Man. This is Car Show and Tell. And we're back on the C4 Corvette Project Plastique. And this section is what I'm going to call the rear brake redo. Or redux, if that's how you want to spell it. So, a few months ago, a while back, we had a couple of videos, when I put new rear bearings in the car, and I redid the rear brakes with what I called a very minor upgrade. That was power stock rotors and pads. The slotted and drilled and the whatever they call those rear evolution carbon ceramic fiber thing pads. Anywho, I had bigger plans in store. That was stuff I bought just to put the car back together and get it back on the road. My main concern at that point in time was the front brakes that I had been working on a kit for. And then I wanted to circle back around to the rear brakes after the fronts were redone. And that time has come. The last series of videos, I think it was before the radio, I worked out a kit that would enable me to put 13-inch brakes behind the stock 16-inch wheels, because I really like those wheels and I didn't want to lose them for 17s. Well, that kit took more time and money than I initially bargained for, but I figured it was going to be expensive. Just not as expensive as it turned out to be. So, now that I've circled back to the rear of the car, I'm trying to make an effort to be as economically conscious as I can here for this plan. So I thought I'd bring you guys in the planning stage of what I'm working out here. In the first place I actually started was on Rock Auto. Believe it or not, if you pick a brake rotor on Rock Auto and then you scroll down to the bottom of that specific details for that brake rotor, it will show you the measurements and specifications for that rotor. So with that handy bit of information, I circled back around to Google, and I Googled different cars that used a drum and disc type rear brake setup. And I made a list, and then I slowly went through that list on Rock Auto, looking at the specifications of their rear rotors. And I came across something interesting. I made up a nice chart so you guys can see. I'm just going to point this out here. These are our different measurements of importance. These are the measurements for the stock rotors of the 87 Corvette, and these are the measurements for a rear rotor for a 2005 BMW M3. Our center hole, that's the hole that the hub pokes through. On the Corvette, I'm just going to go with the metric measurements. 70.6 millimeters. The one on the M3 is 75 for a 4.4 mil difference. The hub bolt pattern is 5 by 120.65. The BMW is 5 by 120 with a 0.65 millimeter difference. That's very minimal. Our e-brake drum diameter is a little bit of a problem. The Corvette's 177, just over 177 millimeters, and the BMW is 185 millimeters, but I have figured out a solution for that problem. The thickness of the rotor is a wash. They're both 20 millimeters thick, and the height is almost nearly a wash as well, with the Corvette being 2.5 millimeter, 63.5 millimeters high, and the BMW being 61.7, so only a 1.8 millimeter difference in hat height, which is important. You don't want the hat height to be bigger because it will wind up hitting the upright or the backing plate. So if it's a little bit shallower, that's actually preferable. You want it to be as close as you can get it without going over. And last but not least, the outside diameter of each rotor. The Corvette is 11.5 inches in diameter, and the BMW is 12.9 inches in diameter, which would give us another 1.4 inches of rotor diameter. So, keeping these differences in mind, let's work through them. The first one is our center hole difference, right? So, here's one of the old rear hub bearings that came out of the car. Okay? And we want a rotor that is hub centric, i.e. it has a tight fit over this rotor, or I'm sorry, over this hub, right? It is centered on the bore of that hub. We can take this is the BMW rotor, 12.9 inches. We can set it on here, and we can put it over the studs, and we can see, tell you what, pick that up, there you go. We can see that there's slop in there, which is a bad thing, because if we throw this over here like this, right, we bolt the wheel on, now our rotor is out of centricity, and it's going to vibrate. The faster you go, it's going to vibrate when you go down the road. So, what's a guy to do? Well, we bought some hub-centric rings, right? You can go on eBay, which I found has probably one of the widest selection of inexpensive hub-centric rings, and pretty much find damn near any size that you would need. And I ordered 2. Actually, I ordered all 4. You have to order a set of 4. Whoop, aluminum hub-centric rings, right? And there's a reason that I went with the aluminum ones and not plastic. See this? Go ahead, pick that back up again. This ring is ideally sized to slide right over the OD of this hub and fit nice and tightly. Unfortunately, while it should have been ideally sized to fit on the inside of this rotor, it's not. So I believe what I'm going to have to do is, it's a close fit. It's just a thousandth or so over. What I think I'm going to have to do is take a cylinder hone and just run it in here ever so, not for a very long period of time, but just run it in here lightly, and then take a ring and check it for fitment, and run it for a couple of seconds and recheck it, run it for a couple of seconds and recheck it, just until I can get one of these to drop into the rotor. And then it should sit on here, and the rotor then will be centered up on our hub-centric ring, which is centered up on our hub and bearing assembly. Now, I said before, I went with aluminum for a reason. They make them out of plastic. They also make these out of aluminum. Hubs and brakes and things under a lot of abuse, track days or autocrossing or whatever, they generate a lot of heat. They get hot, damn hot. Hot enough that if you put a plastic hub-centric ring in there, you're going to melt it. Or it'll catch fire if it has a source of air. I don't know about you guys, but I don't like things on my car catching fire, especially on a fiberglass car. I think it's a bit important to try to eliminate any potential fire hazards when you're working on upgrades like this. So that is the plan. That is why I went with aluminum, and I'm just going to have to hone these a little bit to make them fit the way I'd like them to. And that's why I went with the aluminum ones. Could I order another set? Probably. Would they fit? Well, if I take a couple of, I think it's metric. They're metric size when you order them off eBay. So I could probably order a second set that was slightly thinner. But I've already got these. And I don't want to spend any more money. If I can make these fit, I'll make them fit. Alright. So now that we have our rotor figured out, back in the bag. Bear with me. So we have our rotor figured out. The next step is to take the rear wheels off. Well, no, I lie. That's coming. The next step is to figure out what caliper we're going to use. And I thought about this for a while. And in an effort, and I might change my mind on this later on down the road, but in an effort at the moment to keep costs down, I think in the videos about the rear brakes, when I pointed to the videos about the front brakes, I pointed to the old calipers that we were removed from the front of the car, and I said, don't throw those away yet. In the back of my head, I wondered if I could adapt those to make them work in the rear of the car. I have one of the calipers here. It's a larger caliper with a larger pad and a larger pad contact area. It will need an intermediary bracket that I'll have to fab either out of plate aluminum or plate steel, whatever I have laying around here. I do have some aluminum that I'd much rather use for its lightness, but I will have to install these rotors, slide one of these calipers and brackets over the rotor with the pads installed, and I will have to mock it up and draw out the design for an intermediary bracket. In the meantime, I need to get these disassembled, cleaned, and rebuilt if I plan on using them. So that's actually going to be our next step, but I'm not finished talking about our planning stage as of this video. Coffee.
Yes, coffee.
I have stainless steel brake hoses, right, that I ordered when I put together the front brake kit. I ordered a set of rear hoses as well. And banjo bolts and clips and copper washers. So we already have those. So we already have a plan for our brake hoses. That leads me to circling back around to this old front caliper, because sadly when I started looking around at pad options that fit these calipers, I did not come up with a whole lot. I'm not sure who makes. I haven't exhausted all the possibilities yet. I don't think Hawk made any. I could be wrong. I did so much looking around and I didn't write any of it down, and I can't remember. I know Carbotech doesn't have any offerings available. can't remember if DBA or Hawk had any offerings, but I kind of went with the same thing that I bought the last time. Oh, back to the rotors. Sorry. Back to these rotors. The last time I did the rear brakes, I put power stop stuff on. This is not power stop. This is an R1 Concepts rear rotor. And simply put, the reason that I chose these is because they were slightly less expensive than the power stop stuff. And the second reason was a stylistic choice, and that's because the slotting and cross drilling was actually a closer match to the front rotors that I had put on the car than the power stop stuff was. So that's why I chose these, but mainly because they were slightly cheaper. And I think you guys are saying, well, you put R1 Concepts rotors on the car, why didn't you put R1 Concepts pads on the car? And that reason is because they don't make them for the Corvette front calipers. So that's why I just went with these again. And I don't know what you do or don't know about friction material. These are, what do they call these? The Z26 Extreme Performance Street Pads, not race stuff. And I didn't really put race pads on the front of the car either. Simply put, because I have not tracked the car yet. I'd like to do that in the future, but I haven't yet. And I don't want to live with all of the excessive noise and squealing and grinding sounds that they have to put up with race pads when you're driving it on the street. I wanted to enjoy the car for a little while.
No.
So that's why I went with a more street-oriented pad in front, and then these more street-oriented pads in the rear. However, these are actually still decently rated pads, but they lied to me. These are rated FG. And when I called them and asked them, they said they were rated GG. But I can see right here on the, marked on the pad friction material itself, the DOT rating is actually FG and not GG.
Yeah, we can't see it anyway. It's blurry.
It's too blurry?
Yeah. Here.
That's a shame.
Let me see it.
See if you can zoom in. It's towards the end of that series of numbers. It says
Yep.
FG.
You heard it from me, folks. It says FG on it.
You got pad D294, that's the size of the pad. 2021 1120, which is the date of manufacture. PWR 161, which is like the indication for power stop. You can decode this series of numbers. And every DOT, every brake pad or brake shoe in the United States that's sold must have a series of numbers on it that indicates who made it, when they made it, where they made it, and what rating it got for the chase test. If you don't know what a chase test is, it's basically a test that measures the effectiveness of the brake pad over a varied range of different operating temperatures. If you want to learn more about it, there's a lot of articles on the internet. You can look it up and read it. But essentially, the higher up the numbers go, the better the brake pad works in higher heat situations. So when I called them and asked what their pad was rated, they told me GG, which was a decent rating. And now that I'm looking at it, it says FG, which is, it's still not bad, but I don't appreciate being lied to. Thank you, fucking power stop. Anyway, so there those are, and they're here, so I guess that's what I'm putting on the car now, because I'm not spending any more money on this unless I absolutely have to. So I think that about wraps up our plan for the moment. Just doing a little bit of fine tuning to make everything come together and build a bracket to make these calipers fit the rotor after they've been cleaned up and rebuilt, which will be our next video. Disassembly, blasting, cleaning, painting, reassembly, and shoulders, knees and toes, the whole thing. Getting back to our differences in size here. The brake drum. A lot of folks are probably asking, why don't you just swap C5 or C6 brakes on the back of this thing, right? They have a drum and disc brake setup, right? Just swap those on. Well, it's actually a larger mismatch between the later Corvette stuff and the BMW rotor. The BMW rotor was actually closer in size to what I needed than the later Corvette stuff. And the big sticking point for me was that I like a functional e-brake. I don't want to lose the function of my e-brake when I convert this thing.
And we live on a hill too.
And
so
yeah, it's kind of important. I live in the mountains, on hills, drive around and park on hills all the time. It's kind of important to have a working e-brake. Well, you know, you can always leave the car in gear, but honest to God, I don't know how many people I've talked to who's had cars roll away. They left it in gear, or at least thought they left it in gear, and somehow it wound up out of gear, rolling away. So yeah, it's important to me at least to have a functioning e-brake to this. And here is the solution that I've devised for my e-brake problem. The difference in e-brake drum size, what did I say? 0.31 inches or 7.9 millimeters. So here's my plan. And it's going to involve some machine work, which is probably going to increase the cost of this project, but it is what it is. I'll pay the money and I'll have a working e-brake. The old rotors that came off the car before I redid the rear brakes the last time, I hung on to those. I'm going to have those those old rotors, I'm going to cut the e-brake drum out of the center of them, and I'm going to have that turned down, and I'm just oversized, a little bit larger in diameter than the e-brake drum in this BMW rotor, right? And I'm going to take this BMW rotor, pop it in the oven, and warm it up. And I'm going to take the e-brake drum insert that I machined out of the old Corvette rotors, and I'm going to toss those in the freezer to contract them slightly. So if you know what a friction fit is, or an interference fit, I'm sorry, if you know what an interference fit is, I still have to do the calculations. You can find calculations for interference fit parts based on diameter online. So do the, find a calculation, do the math, figure out what size the part needs to be machined to, take actual measurements, okay, of the parts. Don't just go off of what the internet says. I have measured these and it's actually really close to what the specs on Rock Auto told me. So good on you, Rock Auto. So that's the plan. Shrink the drum down from the original rotor, make it an insert that'll interference fit inside of this BMW rotor. Take this out of the oven, take the frozen insert, pop it in here, drive it in nice and flush with the back side of this rotor. When they equalize in temperature, it shouldn't go anywhere. All it has to do is hold the car on a hill. So I'm hoping the interference fit will be good enough to do that. I'm still trying to make up my mind if I don't want to drill maybe a hole every 120 degrees or maybe a hole every 90 degrees between the new rotor and the old drum insert, and maybe pin it in place as well as the friction or the interference fit. I might go that far, or I might just slop it in here and maybe just put a tack every 90 degrees. Just throw a nice little rosette weld between the two. Not enough to generate any serious heat or distort anything, just enough to tack the thing from going anywhere, as you know, an extra level of
Precaution.
right peace of mind. So that is the plan. You guys know it. All I have to do is execute it. Oh, one last thing before we go, let me get rid of these. I set out with a goal to try to do this all for under 500 bucks. So here's a cost outlay for what it's cost me so far. Both rotors from Rock Auto, $81.79 a piece. Combined pair, $163.58. The brake pads were just under $54. The hub-centric rings that I talked about came from off of eBay, less than $30, $27.22. The brake hose kit that I ordered for the car, I did that a while ago when I was doing the front brakes, so I'm not quite certain how much that hose kit cost, but I'm figuring it was around $175, and I think that's actually a pretty high estimate. I think it was less than that, but I'm going to cut that in half because I used half that kit on the front. So I'm taking the cost for the two rear hoses and hardware, $87.50, and last but not least, tax and shipping on the Rock Auto stuff came out to 48 bucks. So I'm at the total cost involved right now of $380.09. So I've got just under 120 bucks left to go. I already have, like I said, some scrap plate aluminum and some scrap steel sitting around here that I can fashion a couple of intermediary brackets out of. The machine work that it's going to take for the brake emergency brake drum interference fit insert that I'd like to do, might have to pay somebody for that, or I might be able to call in a favor and have somebody do that for me. I don't know yet. I haven't pursued it, but I'll let you guys know how that works out in the future. So there we have it. My great big brain fart idea in a nutshell for all of you to analyze and pick apart and let me know what I'm screwing up and doing wrong. So, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about it in the comments if you would like. Or you could subscribe and follow along.
That shitbox motorcycle joke?
Huh?
Okay. What would they think? What would they call a shitbox motorcycle?
I don't know.
Because I asked you that and you said, let's ask them.
What? Oh.
I asked you that in the car and you said,
Okay.
let's ask them.
Okay. You guys have heard of shitbox cars. Here's a little puzzler for you. I don't remember how the joke goes, but we're not going to give him the answer now. But you know what a shitbox car is? I've had plenty. Maybe you guys have had plenty too. So if you know what a shitbox car is, you know, crappy car, jalopy, whatever, it's called a shitbox car. If you have a motorcycle, it's the same way. What do you call it? It's not a shitbox. It's not a box. So what do you call a shitbox motorcycle? Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Okay, that's the end, I promise. Subscribe if you'd like to, but it's a free country, so if you don't, then fuck me. If you're not going to subscribe, I don't know, maybe hit the like button on your way out. That's all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe learned something, what to do or what not to do. Either way, I'm Tim Toolman. Thanks for joining us, Car Show and Tell. We will see you next time. Later.